Hello friends, welcome to the channel and thank you for watching this video. In this session, we are going to talk about sketching options in Ansys SpaceClaim. This video is the third chapter from Ansys SpaceClaim training module. You can refer the links below for other chapters from this training module. In this session, we are going to learn all the sketching options available in Ansys SpaceClaim Direct Modeler. This covers everything that you need to learn about creating and editing the sketches in SpaceClaim. This is an important session since sketches are the first and essential step to create any 3D geometry in SpaceClaim. So let's get started. All the sketch tools are available in this group under Sketch menu. The sketch group is divided into two parts. First part is for creating the sketch using lines, points, and curves. Second part is for modification and editing of the sketch. This has the tools such as trim the lines, offset the lines or curves. At the beginning, you can create the sketch on this grid that is displayed. However, in case if this grid is not visible, then you need to create a plane to start the sketch. Please remember, to create a sketch you would either need a plane or a planar surface of the existing geometry. Right now, let's look at the option of creating a plane for sketch. Let's switch to the 3D mode. You can find the 3D mode in Design tab. This green solid block over here is the option to go to 3D mode. Let's click this. Now we are in a 3D mode. We can now create a plane using this axis triad. Let's click the plane option from here. Based on the displayed information over here, it prompts us to select a reference to create a plane. There are different ways to create a plane. It will be discussed in detail in the later chapters. For now, we'll go with the use of coordinate axis for creating a plane. So if you want to create a plane on XY, then we need to select the axis that is perpendicular to the XY plane, which is Z-axis arrow. Once we hover the mouse over Z-axis arrow, it will be highlighted, and also you will notice the preview of the plane. We can now select this axis and the plane will be created. You can see the plane in the structure tree as well. Once we have a plane, we can select it and click the sketching mode. This will open the sketch panel. The sketch panel by default opens in an isometric kind of view. We can however change this to align this view to a front view by clicking this option over here. This says plan view. You can see it is now convenient to draw the sketch in this view. The first thing that we observe here is the background grid. This grid helps user to create sketches. We'll see how it does that in the later parts of this session. Let's start off with creating a simple rectangle. For creating the rectangle, we can use a rectangle option. If we hover our mouse cursor over this rectangle, it prompts the user with some information that says drag or click to draw a rectangle aligned with the sketch grid. We can use the sketch grid nodes to draw a rectangle. Let's click this option. On the left, you can see some more options available which are associated with creating a rectangle. You will find such options for all the tools you would use. These are called as sub options. We are now going to look at different ways to draw this rectangle. At first, let's select this option which says define rectangle from center. For this, we need to click the center once and release the left click. For sketching, clicking once will start the sketch and one left click in the end will finish the sketch. So after the first click, you can just move the cursor and you will start to see a rectangle along with the dimensions. There are dimensions keep changing or updating as you move the cursor. We can always pause and change the dimensions. Please note here that the dimension which is highlighted in blue color are active. For example, here 52 mm is active. We can change the dimension to 80. We can just type a number here to change the dimensions. If you now want to change the other dimension, like the 34 mm dimension here, then we need to press tab. Once we press tab, we can see that the 80 mm dimension is updated and now the 34 mm dimension is active. Now we can just type in a different number for this 34 mm and this will be updated as well. Let's choose 50 mm and now we can hit enter. You can see now the rectangle is updated with both the dimensions. Please remember here that the enter key will end the sketch. Hence you should use the tab option first to switch to different edges for dimensions before hitting the enter key. Once the rectangle is created, you can see the sketch information in the structure tree. This is our current sketch and it has 4 lines as we have drawn. We can draw multiple sketches in the same sketch panel. Let's now create a circle. Click circle from here. You will notice the prompt here in display window which says snapping to grid. You can also see a cursor snapping to the grid points. This will usually be the starting point of any curve. In this case, as it is a circle, the starting point will be the center. Let's hover the mouse cursor over this line. You can see the information changes to snapping to curve. Snapping means now wherever we click on this line, it will become the center of the circle. Let's pick the center at a midpoint of this line. SpaceClaim automatically prompts the location of midpoint of any line or curve. This is shown in the form of a triangle as you see here. If you hover your mouse cursor over any of the axes, then the symbol changes to square. This prompts the user to know that the sketch will be snapped at the axis. In our case, the midpoint is somehow coinciding with the axis, hence the symbol changes accordingly. Let's select this triangle to draw our circle. Just one left click. We can move the cursor to change the circle size. For the dimension, let's type in some number and hit enter. We have now created a circle on this rectangle. Let's create one more circle on the opposite edge. Let's select a triangle here, left click and move the cursor. At some point when we move this cursor, the other circle is highlighted in green. This is just indicating us that the current circle is exactly the same size of that one. We can just click on the circle to end the sketch of a circle or just enter the diameter value if a different diameter is needed. We'll go with the same diameter. Let's draw some more things on the sketch. Let's create a rectangle on top of this corner. Select the rectangle option. Left click on this corner and move the cursor. For dimensions, typing some number for this highlighted dimension and then click tab. Once both the dimensions are updated, let's hit enter. So this will update the rectangle. So we have created a small rectangle on top of a bigger one. As you would see here that these are the overlapping edges. One vertical edge is of the small rectangle and one from the bigger rectangle. We do not have to worry about this thing in SpaceClaim. There is no need of any trimming of curves. Let me try to create a rectangle on the opposite corner. As I move the cursor down, you will notice that it will try to snap it with the earlier rectangle. The SpaceClaim try to help the user to snap the edges of the existing curves and geometries to make it easier to draw. If you don't want to use this, we can always use the dimensions. So we can keep moving the cursor until the dimensions we want shows up. Let's say we need 20 by 10. So now right now the dimension is 20 and vertical dimension is 10. So we can now left click and end the sketch here. Let's look at other options for creating different types of curves. First one is the line option. We earlier created a rectangle using a rectangle option. However, we could use the line option to draw 4 lines and make it a rectangle. Let's look at this. For now, let me use a different design window for this. As we're over here on this topic, so you can create different designs in the same space claim session. You can go to new and create design. It will open a different design. So you can work on multiple designs at the same time. Please note that design 1 and design 2 will not be connected. They will be still a separate space claim geometries. So with this line option, we can just draw 4 lines. So with these 4 lines, we have created a sketch. You will notice that it is not in the center as we had created earlier. However, you can use the dimension option to make it to the center. We are going to discuss the dimension option in the later part of the session. Lines are mostly used to draw the shapes. Those are not the standard ones like rectangle or circle or even a pentagon. As you can imagine, the sketch will be made of different types of lines simply connected together. Let's try any other shape here. Let me draw some shape randomly here. So we can draw a line and then draw a slanting line. You can see the angle updated. If you want to change the angle, just keep tab and provide the value. So once you provide the value, the line will be updated. As you can see, when you end the sketch or hit enter, the another line is started. If you do not want this line or if you want to come out of this option, then you have to press escape key. Once you hit the escape key, you will be out of that option. As an alternative to escape key, there is the option called select here. If you click select here, it will also do the same thing. Let's look at other sketch options from this group. The next option is a 3-point circle. In the earlier step, we created a circle using just the center and providing a radius value. We just needed to click at the center point. For this option, we need 3 points to create a circle that will pass through those 3 points. Let's take a look. In order to use this option, let me create one point here on this axis. Now let's use this option. For this option, we will use the endpoints of this line and a newly created point. For creating a circle using this option, the circle shape will differ based on the order of selection of these points. We always prefer to select first the opposite points. For example, let's select these 2 points first and select this point in the end. You can now see the circle is created with these 3 points lying on the circle. So this is how the 3-point circle option works. Next is the tangent line option. This option creates a tangent line to any curve. Before this, let's clean up the space a little bit. As we are on this topic, let's look at how to select these lines and delete or remove from the sketch. You can click select option and click on any edges and hit delete. So it will delete the line or curve whatever you have selected. If you want to select multiple entities, then hold Ctrl key and select the multiple entities. And we can hit delete. We can also use box option to select multiple entities at the same time. In order to do that, just draw a box using a left click from top to bottom. You need to hold the left click and drag to draw a box from left to right. And release the left click, you will see that all the curves which were inside the box are highlighted. We can now just press delete to remove all those lines. Now let's create a circle to demonstrate the tangent line option. When we click this option, and hover our cursor over the circle, a symbol appears indicating a tangent constraint. When you click on this option and hover your cursor over the circle, a symbol appears indicating a tangent constraint. If you now click on the circle and draw a line, it will always be tangent, no matter how you move the line. You can always move the cursor to change the angle of the line and dimensions, but the tangency remains intact. We can also connect this line to any other location on the sketch. Let's connect it over here. Let's draw one more tangent line to this circle. So let's click anywhere on the circle and connect it to the previous line. So this is how tangent line works. The next option is a construction line. This is also a very useful option. However, the next option is a 3-point rectangle. This is similar to a 3-point circle, except this is now a rectangle. For this, we need to select 2 points for the length of the rectangle and then the third point for the height. It is just a different way of creating a rectangle. Next option is ellipse. As we know, ellipse is represented by 2 diameters. Hence, using this option, we need to provide those 2 diameter lines. Let's click on this option. In the grid, where we click becomes the center of the ellipse. And you will notice a line has started on both sides of the center. This is actually the first diameter. You can change or set this first diameter value if you want and click once to fix this first diameter. Let's fix this first diameter, let's say at 34 millimeter, and left click. So we can move the cursor up to set the other diameter. Let's say we want 14 millimeter as the other diameter. Once the diameter shows up, we can just left click again to end the sketch, and now we have an ellipse. Next option is called spline. This option creates a smooth curve from multiple line segments. Let's click on the grid and it will start first segment. Then click next to create the next segment. This will create a smooth transition between the lines. We can create as many segments to make the shape as we would want. Clicking further will create more segments for this curve. We can either leave this curve open or close the loop. Let's try to close the loop. This will form a smooth curve. Next option is tangent arc. This option creates tangent circular line from another curve. This curve can be circular or a straight line. Earlier option we had looked at was the tangent line. This is tangent arc. Let's try this. Let's click this option. First point to select is the point from where you want to start the arc. Hence, select at a location on the line and then move the cursor. This will start the arc. We can set the diameter and sector angle as well. You will notice that a perpendicular line started from the selected point or a tangent location. This line forms the radius and it maintains the perpendicularity while we move the cursor. Once we click again, it will end the curve and this will form a tangent arc to this line. Next is a 3-point arc. This is similar to a 3-point circle, except this is an arc and not a complete circle. You can explore this option. Next option is a sweep arc. This is also an arc creation option. However, this is slightly different. For this, we need to select this option and select a point for the center and then a radius point. Once we fix the radius, the arc will be created when we move the cursor. You can finish this arc at any position you want or provide the dimension of the angle. Once we click again, it will end the arc. So as you can see, this is an arc and not a complete circle. Next is a polygon option. This option is to create a standard polygon. We can just click anywhere and it will start to create a polygon. We can change the orientation of this polygon by changing the angle and size. Next is the point option. This is to create a point at any location on the grid as well as on any line or edge. Click on any edge and left click, so it will create a point. This point can be used to draw further lines and curves. Next option is a face curve. This option is for creating lines on solid surfaces in a 3D mode. We will look at this option in some other session. This covers all the sketch creating options in SpaceClaim. We can move to the sketch editing options now. But before moving to the sketch editing options, let's take a look at some geometry constraints. Those are over here. Let's go back to our earlier sketch. If you notice, everything in this sketch is symmetric about this vertical line. So we can just sketch on one side of the symmetry and mirror it to the other side. Let's try this and the other constraints option. For this, let's create a construction line which will be our mirror line as well. Let's click the construction line option and we can create a construction line exactly from the center of this line. Let's click on the midpoint of this line and connect it to the midpoint of the bottom line. Construction line is represented by a dashed line. Please note one thing here, that this line will not be a part of the sketch that will be exported to 3D mode for solid model creation. It is just used as a reference for the respective operations. Now as we have drawn this line, we need to define it as a mirror line or a symmetry line. To do this, right click on this line and select the option Set as Mirror Line. You will notice that the line has been changed from a dash to a kind of center line type. From here, whatever we will create on either side of this line will be replicated or mirrored on the opposite side. Let's draw some shape at the bottom. You can see the sketches we have drawn on the left side is replicated on the other side. Let's create some circles. For this case, let's do something different for defining the center of the circle. Just to learn some other options, click on the circle icon and go to the options panel over here. If you scroll down, there are some different options here for selecting a coordinate system. For example, Cartesian coordinate system and polar dimension option. What this means is we can specify the center location of a circle with respect to any existing geometry. Let's click on Cartesian dimensions. You will notice a new symbol appears, which is a blue circle when you hover your cursor over any particular point. Let's define a center location with respect to this point. Click on this point and move the cursor. You can see the horizontal and vertical distances from this point. Let's choose some distances from the center as it is displayed here and left click to create and fix the center location of the circle. Once I left click and move the cursor, it will start to draw the circle from that particular location. We can enter some diameter dimension here and hit enter to end the sketch and hit escape to come out of that option. You will notice that the circle is mirrored on the other side of the line. You can always switch on and off this mirror line. In order to switch off this mirror line, you can just right click on it and click the set as mirror line option again. It will disable the mirror line. You can see now the structure of the line has changed to dashed once again. So this is not a mirror line anymore. So far we have created the sketches. Let's now look at the options to modify the sketch. First one is creating the rounded corner. Click on this option and click on any corner. It will create a rounded corner. We can change the radius by just typing in some number. So it will convert the rounded corner into a smooth corner. Another option is offset. We can offset the curves. Click on any curve and move the cursor. It will preview the offset curve. We can provide the offset distance and press enter key. Let's look at the trim option now. For this, let me draw some sketch. Let's select the trim option. Using this option, we can select the edges that we want to remove from the sketch. Once done, we are now ready to go to 3D mode. You can see that one surface is created. This is due to the reason that we trimmed all the internal lines. Let's see what happens we don't use the trim option. Let's go back one step a little. We can undo this to get back to the original shape. If we do not trim this, it will still go to 3D mode with this sketch. It will not create any problem. However, in SpaceClaim, every closed loop of edges form a face. Hence, we can see that there are number of surfaces right now as compared to the one which we had earlier. So we will need to select all those surfaces in order to use the pull operation to create a 3D solid. Let's look at some other options in editing the sketch. This is the option for creating corners. If you have two edges and want to extend or connect those at a corner, then this option can be used. We have drawn a horizontal line. Let's draw another line which will be intersecting this line. Let's say we would like to connect these two lines at this corner and remove the extra edges. Then we can use this option. Let's click here and click both the edges. In this case, the sequence of selection does not matter. It will produce the same result. You would notice that the two edges are now connected at the corner and the extra edges are removed. Let's try this option once more with the open edges. Let me try to connect these two edges. Once you click both these edges, it will highlight the connection. And once you click, it will end the operation. Next option is splitting the curve. You can split any curve or a line into multiple segments by just clicking on it. Let's try this option. This is a two-step process. First, we need to select the edge or curve to be split. Once you select it, you can see a cutter symbol appears by the cursor. This prompts us to select a cutter point. In this case, we can move our cursor on the edge to select the location of the splitting. Once you click on the line anywhere, it will split the curve at that location and create a point at the junction. You can see that there are now two lines and a point connecting those. Let's look at the next option. This option is to create a blend or a curved line from a straight line. This is a very simple and straightforward option. Let's click this option and select any edge and move the cursor. You need to hold the left click and move the cursor. Moving the cursor will create the curve. You will notice that the two endpoints of the line are fixed and only radius is the input which we can change. You can just release the left click to end the operation. It will create the arc. Let's move to the next point. You can see a dimension option here. As you know, we were entering the dimensions of the lines or curves while creating those lines. With this option, you can change the dimension of any curve or line at any point of time. The sketch will be updated accordingly. Let's try this option. For this, let me create one sketch. You can see that I have created those lines just connecting the rectangle and the circle. There are no constraints set here. Let's try setting some dimensions. Click the dimension and you can click any line or any distance you want to set. For example, let me bring this circle center on this vertical axis. We can select the axis and the center. You can see the dimension is now 4 millimeter. You can always click this 4 millimeter. Once it is highlighted, you can change the dimension. Now as we want the circle to be on the vertical line, we can set this dimension as 0. You can see the sketch is now updated according to the dimensions. Let me set the dimensions of this rectangle. So I'm going to set the dimensions according to the global axis. So click the axis and click the vertical line. You can see that the dimensions are updated. You would have noticed that the circle didn't move from the vertical y-axis because we had set the dimensions earlier. Accordingly, we can set the dimensions of the horizontal lines of the rectangle. Click the axis first and then click the horizontal line. You can see that the circle is now intersecting with the rectangle. We can change this distance from the rectangle. So let's select the rectangle top surface and the center point of the circle. So this is how you can change the dimensions of any sketch once it is created. You can see that these lines are not tangent to the circle because we didn't use any constraints. You could use a tangent line for creating these lines for setting up the tangent line constraints. Let's delete these lines and create a tangent line to this circle. This is the option we had looked at earlier. This is for the tangent line. Let's click the circle on anywhere and then connect this to the point. Now try setting these dimensions once more to check whether the tangency will remain intact. Let's click on dimensions, click this distance, and then you can change the distance of the circle. You can see the lines are still tangent. So this is why the setting up the constraints is important. In this case, we can also set up the angles. Let's draw a fillet here at the corner. We can also change the radius of this fillet by just using this dimension option. So this is how the dimension option works. Next section in this session is for setting up these constraints. All the constraints are placed over here in this constraints section. As we have seen, it is always a good practice to create a properly constrained sketches. It is however not necessary due to the reason that SpaceClaim does not store the sketch information once the 3D models are created. We will know about that in some other session. There is also one more reason why this is important though. If you assign the constraint to the sketch objects like the tangency here we have seen, the constraint will always be maintained and respected whenever you would change any other dimensions and move any other lines or the curves. Let's look at these options. Let me use a fresh design window. Let me draw a circle just to get this constraints option activated. The first option is coincident constraint. This is for coinciding the 2 points or 2 curves on top of each other. For example, let's create one more circle at some offset location. Let's click this constraint option and click the circle and another circle. You can see that the two circles are now coincident. They actually became a concentric. Let's try this option with lines as well. Let me draw two lines and try to use this option. You can also use this option for the lines as well as the points. Let me use it with points. Let's select this point and another point. You can see that the points now have become coincident and the lines have been moved accordingly since the point belongs to that particular line. You would have noticed that the order of selection is important here. The entity which is selected next will be moved towards the first selection. So you can choose the action accordingly for selections. Next option we can look at is a concentric constraint. In this particular case, this constraint is only for the circles or the curved geometries. Let's draw two circles and try to use this option. You can see that the two circles are now concentric. The next option to look at is a tangent constraint. Now this is a constraint. Once we have a line and a circle or a curve, you can make this as tangent constraint. We looked at the earlier option which was called a tangent line. That was slightly different. That was while creating the line tangent to the circle. Now this is for setting up a constraint between the existing line and a circle. Let's draw another circle for this and a line. I have drawn a random line here just to demonstrate how this constraint option works. Let's click this option, click the circle and then this line. This line is however tangent to the circle. This line didn't extend though, but it is still a tangent line to this circle. Now if we want to move this line using this option, it will always remain tangent. Wherever you will move this line, the tangency will remain intact. This is why setting up the constraints is important. There is a horizontal line and vertical line constraint over here. Let's look at these options. If you have a slant line, you can make it either horizontal or vertical. However, there seems to be a bug here. If we use a horizontal constraint, it will make the line vertical and vice versa for the vertical constraint option. Let's try this option to make this line as horizontal. You can see that even though I created a horizontal constraint, it made the line vertical. Let's undo this and try to use the vertical option. Let's select the vertical constraint over here and select the line. It made the line horizontal. Hence, use this option accordingly whether you want to make the line vertical or horizontal. Next option is called parallel constraint. This will apply a parallel constraint between the two sketch entities, particularly lines. Let's create one more line which is again a slanting one, and let's try to make these two lines parallel. Let's select this option and select the line. So you can see the lines have become parallel now. Similar to this, there is one option called perpendicular constraint. This will make the two lines perpendicular to each other. Let's create one line and let's try to make this line perpendicular to this horizontal line. Select this option, select the line and then choose this line. You can now see that the line have become perpendicular. Now if you move this line up, it will still remain perpendicular. No matter how you move this line will always be perpendicular to this horizontal line. The next option is equal radius constraint. As the constraint says, it will apply equal radius to both the circles or the curves. Let's select this option, choose this circle and this circle. Now you can see the other circle diameter or radius have become equal to this circle. Let's use this option for selecting few more circles. Let me create one bigger circle here and now change the radius of these two circles as equal. Select this option, select the first circle and the second one. You can see the radius have become equal. Similar to the equal radius constraint, there is called equal length constraint. This is very similar to the equal radius. It is just like in this case, it will make the two lines as of equal lengths. Let's select this constraint and select any two lines to make the length equal. You can see that the two lines have become now equal length. Let's select this line and this line. The length have now become equal. Let's check that. The last one we would look at is called symmetry constraint. We have seen symmetry and mirroring options so far. However, please remember this is about setting the constraints between the existing curves. That is the only difference. It will not create a mirroring sketch, but rather it will apply a symmetry constraint between the two sketches or two curves. For example, in this case, these two circles, we can see they are not at all symmetric. So if we want these two circles to be symmetric, then this option can be used. Let's try this option. We need to select an axis of symmetry. This doesn't need to be an axis like x and y axis. It can be any construction line as well. For now, let's go ahead with this axis. So let's select an axis of symmetry here first. And then we can select this circle to be symmetric with this circle and click this circle. You can see now the other circle has become symmetric, and you would also notice that the size has also been changed to be equal to the size of this circle. So that's why in this case the order of selection is important. Let's reverse the order of selection and see what happens. Let me select this circle first and this circle second. Now you can see the sizes have changed accordingly, and also the mirroring. We can also use this option for any lines or any points as well. Now let's select these two lines. You can see that these two lines have now become symmetric about this vertical axis. Once again, remember to choose the selection order accordingly. The next option we are going to look at is called select. Earlier we looked at this option to just come out of any particular option we were working in. However, this is a very interesting option. When you click select and move your cursor over any curve, you will see that it is highlighted, and as well as you can see the anchor symbol there or a pan symbol. If you hold the left click on this curve and move the cursor, let's see what happens. It is simply changing the size or radius of the circle. Well, this is a random movement. There is no dimensions here. Of course, you can always change the dimensions later. Once you release the left click, it will set the radius or diameter at that particular instant. And also you can see as there was a symmetric constraint, the other circle was also changing the radius accordingly. You can do this with any type of curves, whether it is a circle or a line. For example, for this line, if I want to change the length, then just we need to click on the point and move it. You can see we can move the point in any direction, and you can change the orientation of this line as well as the length. And due to the symmetric constraint, the other line is also moving. This can be used with any type of curve. Let's look at this option for this rectangle. If you click on this rectangle, a line, and then move, the whole rectangle will move. If you click on a point, then it will move, and also it will change the size. So accordingly, you can use the selection to move either the rectangle or to increase its size. The next option here is called pull. This option here is like a shortcut to go to pull option in a 3D mode. If you click it, it will exit the sketch and it will take us to the 3D mode. We are going to look at the pull option in detail in some other session. So let's skip it for now. Let's undo to go back to our sketch. Next is the move option. This is a general move option which moves one entity from one position to another. This is the same option that is there in 3D mode as well. We will look at this option in some other session. For now, let's understand this option with respect to the sketch mode. Let's draw one circle in the rectangle. Now let's choose this option. Once you click it, you will see a XY triad that is displayed. This is just to move the entity with respect to X, Y, and also rotate. If you want to translate this curve in either this direction or a vertical direction, you can choose to select the axis accordingly. If we want to move the circle in a vertical direction, then hold the left click on this arrow and then move the cursor. In this case, you would also see the dimensions there. Once you release the left click, it will set the position there. However, we can also change the dimensions here, and the position will be set according to the dimensions we have entered. We can also click on this line and you can see the axis have now moved to that particular line. Now if we want to move the line in horizontal direction, hold the left click on this arrow and move the cursor. As this line is a part of this rectangle, it is moving with the rectangle. Let's see what happens if we move this point. Because we had drawn this rectangle using this rectangle option, it by default takes the constraint of the rectangle. So the point belongs to the rectangle, that's why it is moving the whole rectangle as a whole. If I draw the lines, random lines, and then select this option, let's see what happens. You can see the lines are moving independently. Because the point is a part of the line, that's why it is translating the line instead of the whole quadrilateral. So this way you can use move option to move any particular sketch or any line in any direction. With this move option, you are seeing now we can move the entities. If you want to create a copy of the moved entities, then it is a simple option. Left click on the any sketch entity you want to move and hold the control key while you translate this curve. You can see that one copy is created. Now you want to create a copy of both the circles together, we need to select both the circles at the same time. Let's use a box option. Now I have selected two circles here and let's try to create a copy of these circles. So hold the control key and hold the left click to move these two circles. And once you are done, you can release both the control key as well as the left click. In this case, you can also set the dimensions here. So this is how the move option works in the sketching mode as well. Once the sketch is complete, we need to go to 3D mode for creating solids from the sketch. There are, however, multiple ways to do this. We looked at the pull option here. The second option here is called end sketch editing. Once we click this, we'll automatically go to the 3D mode. Let's click this option. You can see now we are now in the 3D mode. By default, SpaceClaim takes you to the pull option once you exit the sketch mode. Let's undo to look at some other option. This is another option to go back to the 3D mode. Once you are in the sketch mode, click this option and it will take you to the 3D mode. Let's go back one more time to look at another option to do the same operation. In the sketch mode, you will see a 3D solid symbol over here as well. It also displays the information such as return to 3D mode. If you click this, it will take you to the 3D mode. And this gauge can now be used for pull option to create the 3D solids. Pull option is covered in detail in next chapters. You can refer the next chapters in this module for more other topics. This concludes the chapter of sketching options in Ansys SpaceClaim Direct Modeler. Thanks once again for watching this video. Please don't forget to check out the next chapters in this training module.